Okay, so I think we'll get started. So hello everyone. Just a few logistical items. Please feel free to use the Q&A feature to ask any questions that you have. We'll sort of go through a PowerPoint and stop at each section of information and take your questions. We'll sort of get through as many of those as we can. Also, this webinar will be recorded and available on our website, and we'll also email it out to various lists as well. So thank you all for being here and for your interest in the Policy Fellows program. It's so great to see so many of you. My name is Sara Benzkofer. I'm the new Executive Director of the Policy Fellows program, and I also lead a number of other engagement efforts here at the Center for the Study of Politics and Governance. I've been in this position just about 6 months now. My career has centered on public policy, advocacy, and civic engagement. I've been legislative staff in both the Minnesota House and Senate, and most recently was an executive director of an organization that supported early childhood and school age care educators, where I also led a very similar fellowship for those, for that profession. I love working in partnership with others to think about solutions to our most pressing issues and create positive change in our communities. And so I'm grateful to be part of this program. Next, I will have my colleague Kristen say hello.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Fabin, and I work alongside Sara with the Policy Fellows program. I've been working with the Policy Fellows program and at the Humphrey School for almost 1.5 years now. So this is my second application cycle. Prior to joining the Humphrey School, I worked in youth development, but I'm really excited to be here today and help answer any questions. So thank you for being here.
Great, thank you. I'm also very pleased that 2 Policy Fellow alumni are also joining us to share their experiences and advice. So Damon, do you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Damon Shahom. I was 2016-2017 fellow. I've also stayed connected to the program since my time in the fellowship, serving on the selection committee, I think 3 different times now since that time, and also returning to do some facilitative work for the cohorts as well. Really appreciate the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today and share a little bit about the program with you.
Great, thank you. And Anna.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Anna Lovely. I am a 2018-19 fellow. I work for Cargill, one of the largest companies in Minnesota. I lead our global communications team. And I've been with this company about 15 years. So always have a heart for the U of M. I went to graduate school at the U, and then this policy fellowship program, obviously a big moment in my life and career as well, that I'll gladly share my experience with you all today. Trying to stay as involved as I can in being an alumni of the Fellows program, through participation in different events and different aspects to support, future fellows is a big passion of mine. So glad to be invited and happy to be here today.
Great, thank you. So today's agenda will be touching on the many aspects of the program and the application process. As I said, we'll take questions during each section, and the alumni will share their reflections too. The Policy Fellows program is a great opportunity, but it's also a big commitment. There are a number of leadership programs, master's programs, et cetera. And it's our hope that this webinar will help you discern if this fellowship is right for you and at this time. So this has been a very difficult year for so many reasons, and many of you have likely been thinking about the many issues you've been faced with. We've continued the program virtually this year because we thought it was critically important to continue to create space for people to lean into each other, lean into bipartisanship, lean into working across difference. So in terms of what the Policy Fellows program is, it's an engaging and intensive bipartisan learning experience for Minnesota leaders in civic and public affairs. And bipartisanship is a key word there. There's a key value of the program since its inception 31 years ago. And that was due to Vice President Mondale, who founded this program in partnership with Ambassador Jerry Joseph. And as you know, Mr. Mondale died last week, and he will be greatly missed. He continued to have a huge influence on the program even after he was no longer the director, and his legacy lives on in this program and through all the alumni who have participated. The program was then run for a dozen or so years by Congressman Tim Penny and Vin Weber. And for the last 15 years or so, Professor Larry Jacobs has led the program. The program is a cohort experience. You learn from and with others in the program. It's also an opportunity to build your own leadership skills and awareness and capacity, and how your work in your community fits into these broader systems at play, which is where that public policy and politics come in. You also have access to those who hold influential positions in Minnesota and in DC, and who are making important decisions that impact our lives. The fellows in the program are living and working in Minnesota. Another core value and something that sets this program apart from other leadership programs is the focus on bringing people together across sectors. So we are intentional about having people from nonprofits, business, government, education, and the military. There are typically 35 or so fellows in the cohort, and it's very intentionally diverse across many metrics. Politically, geographically, we want both Metro and Greater Minnesota, race, ethnicity, the sector as I described, personal background, age, and experience level. We talk about this being a mid-career opportunity, and that translates to fellows who are maybe in their late 20s to fellows who are maybe in their mid-50s. Most are in their 30s and 40s, but it's really a broad range, and we welcome these varied experiences. All of this makes for a much richer experience for everyone. We're looking for people who want to learn and grow, and also who want to contribute. Those who are open and curious and who ask questions. We're not asking you to abandon your beliefs, but to seek to understand others and thereby better understand your own beliefs too. We also have an active alumni network. There's an alumni board who plans events, who fundraise for scholarship support, and alumni who will participate in webinars like this and other projects. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to Damon and Anna again. Anna, do you want to share maybe any reasons for why you chose to do the fellowship when you did, and or your cohort experience?
Sure. So I came into this program, and I often describe it, it's a leadership program in the context of policy. And that's how I really approached it and why it was so valuable for me. I was at a place in my career where I was moving from more of an individual contributor into more of a leadership role in managing a much broader team. And I was looking for ways to think more about what kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of discussions do I want to have? How do I really lead a very diverse, really global team? And so my manager at the time had recommended I look at this program, knowing that even though my career path has largely been communications and public relations, I have a massive hobby of politics and policy and an interest area in that spot. And it does impact so much of what I do in my work. And so I knew some people who'd done this program and looked at it and really thought this is the right time for me to think about it. And then personally though, too, it was, I said I was an 18-19 cohort. We were in such a time, and still are, frankly, but at that time felt really so much more polarizing than it had ever been in work and community everywhere. And I was really hungry for an opportunity to be somewhere where you could have more civil discussion about some of these bigger issues and think through how do we facilitate that in other areas. And I love the fact that this program was intentionally diverse, right? I come from a corporate background and a corporate point of view, but my cohort was nonprofit and government and education. And as Sara said, rural Minnesota, Metro. And I just was looking for something that allowed me to explore both that personal development and have those conversations, as well as really help me professionally. And I learned so many things that I brought back to both of those areas of my life through this program. in the relationships that I built in it and what I learned and the discussions that were facilitated. So good and bad days in it. I mean, there's always that when you're talking about policy, there's some hard conversations, but it was the right moment for me. And I would encourage you as you're thinking about applying for it, make sure it as well for you is the right moment so that you can really give the time and the attention to it to really get out of it what you put in.
Great, thank you. Damon?
Yeah, that was great, Anna. I think for me, while all of those things were true as well in terms of why it was the right fit for me at the time, I was very fortunate to be working across difference in my nonprofit role at the time with the Wilder Foundation in St. Paul. But it was very much sort of one side of a lot of issues. So being able to be in space that had a collective of individuals from varying perspectives was really something that was intriguing to me. I was also in this at this nexus point for leadership development that was now incorporating policy. And so having a better sense of the mechanisms that were at play to develop and move policy along at our local and federal levels was something that I really was looking forward to and got out of the experience. And, you know, to be honest, some of it is speaking to Anna's point about, you know, being able to have sort of a space to have these discussions. Some of it is about sitting in the tension. You know, and as civil as the discussions could be, there were times when they weren't. And to be honest, they shouldn't have been in some ways, right? Because that was what helped draw in more perspectives and ultimately, I think, helped reveal not just disparities or divisions between people's experiences, but also reveal sort of the root for beliefs that exists across our community. And I say that with the big C. And when we get to the root of those beliefs, that's when we can sort of start making our way towards some common solutions to the challenges that we're all facing. So for me, that was a big part of the why. The other why for me in terms of joining was this idea of maintaining a learner's mindset. I really do believe in myself as a lifelong learner, and this was an opportunity to learn from others, learn with others, and continue to develop my own perspectives in a meaningful way as an individual who was becoming and has become more, hard for me to say, but influential as a leader in community, not because people seek me out because I'm like some wise soul, although my age is getting there now. It's more because of the experiences I've had, the networks that I'm a part of, and the work that I've been associated with that, you know, let me into rooms that I need to bring not only my own voice and perspective, but that of others. And so, you know, trying to develop myself in a way that was effective was part of my why for coming into this program as well. And I feel like I got that out of it.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much for that. So for those that might have joined us a little bit later, just a reminder that please feel free to put any questions in the Q&A along the bottom navigation bar there. We'll be happy to answer your questions. So next up, just talking about the program components and expectations. So we meet monthly for full day sessions. The dates are listed on our website in the FAQ section. You know, other programs may meet intensively for a week or so, but we meet monthly over a 10-month period intentionally, so you can build relationships with those in your cohort. There's also a sample curriculum on our website, so I encourage you to take a look at that to get more detail. But overall, each session has a skill building workshop, like things around conflict fluency, persuasive communications, stakeholder engagement, and coalition building, where we have a guest facilitator and we dig deeper into that one topic. Then we often have a panel of guest speakers who are applying that topic in their work, and or it's a topic of particular interest at that moment in time in our state. there's also time during the sessions to work on your projects. So the group projects are developed by the fellows. We start in October with brainstorming ideas that are of interest. And then there's a few month period there where conversations continue, all the ideas are shared. And then one of our sessions, we take time to decide which projects are going to move forward, usually in teams of 4 to 7 or so. Projects range from raising awareness for issues that haven't gotten attention to projects that are already being discussed at the Capitol. And as the fellows dig deeper, they may find they want to pivot their project. So what you decide on in that November, December timeframe isn't set in stone. Also, this is an opportunity to build stronger relationships with those that are working with you on that project together. So again, just turning to Damon and Anna, if you wanted to talk about either the project that you worked on or projects that were inspiring to you during your cohort year.
If I can get off mute, that's the trick right there. Sure, I can go first. I'll talk about the project I worked on because it was really interesting at the time. We were, one of the people in my cohort works for the Children's Defense Fund, and her organization was really advocating for some particular funding around more community-based action focused on obviously kids, but it was more specific on kids and underrepresented groups, specifically around nutrition and health, which is obviously something I'm really interested in being at Cargill, but also around some education opportunities. And this whole idea that if we really drove some of that funding to those local communities, they could take that and move it so much more. So the project was already well underway. We weren't, the bill even existed. It was already written. It had been considered in a previous session. And it wasn't, they were trying to get it in consideration in this particular session at the Capitol in Minnesota. And so we kind of became arms and legs as a group for that coalition. It was the Children's Defense Fund and many other groups working toward it. So we did some research. We looked at some other state programs that were similar in funding to look at success and lessons learned, and just tried to give them as much information as we could. And it was such an up and down project, right? It went from, oh, it's in consideration to, oh no, or here, oh, and at the last minute got included in a funding bill, not at the full amount that was recommended, but at something, right? And it was just this moment of celebration. I felt I went up and down that legislative journey with those groups, felt I had very little to do with the outcome, but it was just fun to be part of that and learn from that. And our group coming together to work on it, come up with ideas. And one of the biggest takeaways I got out of that session was we were so excited about some of the research we were doing. Had so much really good data from other states. Some of the, the Federal Reserve of Minnesota had done some research on just how these investments can return so much more. And, then at the end of the day, it was like, well, it really won't matter because it's going to get included whether this legislator wants it or not. It was kind of disheartening and a little bit of like, oh, it's got to be kidding. But it taught me a lot about influence. And I use some of those skills a bit more too, as I think, and Damon, what you were talking about, sitting in that tension of how do you work through and find that common ground to get what you want in the outcome, and bringing that forward really hit home for me. So it was a really fun project, and it was timely, which was great too. And I loved the variance of our group. Our group was really diverse. Obviously, the person leading it was so passionate about it, but others of us were just interested in the topic and interested in how this worked. And so we kind of came together in a little ragtag kind of way sometimes, but it was really fun.
Yeah, interestingly enough, my project too was with CDF when I was a fellow. It was related more to clarifying their message in multiple formats. So everything from the website to the actual marketing language used around trying to build a stronger coalition in support of families that needed support, quite honestly, because it had gotten to be that people associated the work of CDF at that time, this is per CDF, not us, with a very sort of like small group of marginalized individuals. And so that was making it harder for them to gain traction at the state capitol. because people didn't see themselves or their communities in it when actually they were. So it was fascinating in that sense, the messaging part, learning the process of that. But speaking to this other point that you were making, like you get all excited about the possibility of changing policy, and what you learned pretty quickly was that there are some things that take, I'm going to say multiple years, and I'm being kind, to go through the legislative process to be considered. And I think you sort of know that as folks that are, paying attention to policy. But when you get fired up about something, you're really passionate, and it's pretty clear there's a need. You're like, how can we speed this up? How can this process be sped up at all? And so that was a great takeaway for me. I will share, there was a group in my same year that did a great work that actually did get something, that brought it up, included it, and it actually did get some funding. And it was around, I'm going to get it a little bit wrong, but it was around the subsidies that are provided for folks who need assistance for diapers, believe it or not. And the reason it was such a big deal is because diapers were expensive. And so it would take up a huge amount of a family's subsidy to buy diapers. And so essentially what they were working to do is get that excluded as a cost, if you will, along with, any of their subsidies around food or housing or anything else. And so I know I'm butchering it. I apologize for that, but that was something I thought was really fantastic, because it was like something nobody probably really thought about. And somebody in our group knew about it as an issue and said, it's got to change, and got people in the group organized around it, and they were able to make a change around it. So in that sense, the group projects are pretty cool. They also give you a chance to connect more distinctly with your cohort mates, at least a small group of them, because we meet once a month, or whatever the rhythm ends up being for it, in our big groups. And you might get to, split off into a group with the same people here and there, but this gives you a deep dive with a smaller group of people to get to know them, to get to know what they do, how they do it, why they do it, and then put in some work together in the experience. So that's what I appreciated the most, I think, out of the group project.
Thank you. I mean, the projects, like I said, can run the gamut. And so some may be involved with at the Capitol, but some might not, right? Like sometimes we've seen people, have a letter to the editor campaign and things like that too. So just so everyone knows that there's a lot of options available. So this year's cohort was all virtual because of COVID, but we're very hopeful that we'll be able to be in person this fall. And if so, the sessions are held in the Twin Cities, at the Humphrey, but also at different locations around the cities, just to keep things interesting. But also gives the fellows an opportunity to be in touch with organizations and businesses that are in our community. 1 month we are at the state capitol, where we meet with legislators, nonpartisan staff, lobbyists, et cetera. And we also have a 4-day study trip to DC, which is a highlight of the program, and where fellows have the opportunity to meet with a wide variety of people working in that public policy space in Washington. In terms of expectations, as I said before, this is a cohort experience. So we expect that you'll be present at each session, that you'll be interested in learning and listening, that you'll strive to be effective and not right, and that you'll get out of your own echo chamber and connect across difference. Also, I think Anna may have mentioned this earlier, but like many things, you get out what you put in. And so we expect you to prioritize this experience and take advantage of all the opportunities that the program offers. I'm just going to pause here and see if there are questions. So would it be unusual for a Humphrey School student to also be in the Policy Fellows program? So I think that would be hard to be doing both at the same time. But I think maybe we could talk offline too, just to see if your particular experience or experience might be different than that. But Kristen, I don't know if you have more information about that in the past, but
I would say that I haven't heard about that, but it doesn't necessarily prohibit you from applying. But I do think that a further conversation would be a good idea.
Yeah. So let's see. Is the program recommended for Minnesota residents? So yes. So we expect that you are primarily working and living in Minnesota. How long are the day-long meetings? So they're usually, so it's been a little bit different. This last year with COVID, they've been a little bit shorter. But I think if we're back in person, they'll typically be around the 8 to 4-ish time period. There are some of these that we're going to get to, so I'm not going to answer all of these right now. Do you see any, Kristen, that I missed that would be applicable?
Just related to the Humphrey student question, UMN staff are encouraged to apply, and you're not excluded from that just because you work at the U of M. So we welcome you to apply if you're interested.
Here's one. Do you have guidance on the overall time commitment for the program? So again, each month there's going to be, the 8 to 4-ish time period, plus there may be an hour or two in prep work, and or maybe you might be meeting with your project group separately from the session too.
I can add to that, Sarah, just
Sure.
because I think that was one of my bigger concerns as I was approaching the program too, is how do I balance all that? And really setting aside that one day, most of it happens in that day, and they really create space in that day too for the group projects and the group meetings. And the pre-reads and materials are all very doable. I think that was something I was, am I gonna have homework? Am I gonna have to read? It's all those elements to it. It's really manageable. I think they really take into consideration that everyone who's involved in it has carried a very big load outside of the program. And even the groups too, you work with such flexibility, and some things we did together as a group and some things we went and did on our own and brought it back. So I completely found it to be a manageable amount of time. But I will say too, if you don't prioritize it, it will not be the experience, because you do need to be there in person. I had a really, really busy travel schedule pre-pandemic. So I was concerned about that. And I think I did miss one day, and I was so mad because I missed the chance, because I looked forward to those Fridays every month. That was what really got to focus on this and do this.
Thank you for adding that. Okay, so I think we'll move on to the next section and keep looking at the Q&A. So more information about the application process. So in terms of very basic information, on our website, you'll download an application in Microsoft Word, and you'll fill out that piece, prepare, answer the form, and the essays are in that document. And then you'll go back to our website where there's a link to an online platform where you enter some more basic information, and then you'll upload that Word document, or if you want to move it into a PDF on our site. So as we've talked about, we're wanting to build a diverse cohort. So we want to hear about how you got to where you are today. If you want to talk about your work, if you want to talk about what you're doing in your community, just don't share your job title, but really talk about what that work is like and what you're doing. Try to avoid acronyms as much as possible, and how you're describing what you're up to. But we're also interested in what is challenging for you right now. What are you struggling with? And how do you think this program will help you in these challenges to learn and grow? So showing some self-awareness, some self-reflection on where you are right now is helpful information to share. We ask for 2 recommendation letters They can be people who know you from your work or in your community. Maybe that's a previous fellow that you know. We like to be a current recommendation, someone who will speak to your involvement in the program specifically. And ideally it would be, one from work, one from community versus two from your work, for example. So you want to choose people who can speak to where you are in your leadership journey and how this program will help you in building your capacity. So we typically have twice as many applicants as we can accept. And as Damon mentioned earlier, he served in the selection committee and can attest to how tough those decisions can be. The selection committee is made up of alumni and community members, and they dig into each application. And they are looking for people who are at an inflection point in their career and their life, where they've had some professional experiences, some experiences in the community, but are eager for more growth. And they want to contribute and learn how they can have a greater impact. But as I mentioned before, we're also looking to have a diverse cohort across those metrics. So we're wanting to ensure that we have Greater Minnesota and Metro, the sectors that I spoke about, et cetera. So Damon and Anna, to that point, I don't know, Damon, if you want to talk about what that selection process is like and how you would advise people on submitting their application.
Yeah, the process, how it has looked in past has been one where you collectively go through all of the applications. We tried to have a quantitative and a qualitative aspect to it. So there's sort of a, what were the metrics that stood out for you and how would you rate them for a candidate? But there was then also sort of the more narrative-based qualitative reaction to what was shared. And I did put something in the Q&A around this, that you're looking for people that are focused both on what they could learn, but what they can bring to the cohort as well. And so when you hear that in an application, when you hear people are, distinctly trying to get something from the experience, but also recognize that they have something to bring to it, I think that makes for a really fantastic fellow, because it is not meant to be a one-way street at all when you get into it. The more dynamic the group of people together, the more dynamic the experience can be. So as a individual in the process of going through applications and advising on selection, that was often what I was looking for. Yes, I was looking for the diversity of experiences, both personally and professionally, that might also enrich the dynamic of the cohort. And so if you can share something around that, that's always useful. But I can tell you that I wasn't looking for, okay, I need somebody that's looking to, move into public policy, or I'm looking for somebody that really gets geeked about politics. I mean, those are neat things to have as additions, because it helps give me a sense of how invested you might be and excited you might get around aspects of the program. But for me, this isn't just a program around public policy or politics. This is a program around how people show up in our sort of community and civic institutions and affect change. So people that are prepared to speak about that and offer something to that space, I think, make for really great fellows. I don't want to diminish that there is an importance to sort of how this impacts the organizational experience that you have. So I think Anna was bringing this up a little bit, like, she was advised around, like, this would be good for you because it would walk you into what work you will be doing or could be doing within an organization. That's totally a fantastic way of thinking about this experience, helping to heighten that. When I was in it, I was very much steeped in community and individual leadership development. I had just started kind of getting involved in public policy writ large. And so, there was part of me, I think, that went into it thinking, okay, this will network me into public policy a little bit more distinctly. But I would say it didn't do that. And that was okay. Actually, what it did for me was it gave me a better understanding of the depth and breadth of leadership across our civic landscape. And so what I took away from it in the end, I think, was probably more powerful than, yeah, you can go through programs that will teach you legislative process, but you can't necessarily go through a program that has you integrated or immersed with others in experiencing processes related to public policy. So yeah, if you can think of ways to incorporate all of that into your application, I'm sure you do well. I don't. Honestly, speak in your own voice is what I would also say. Don't try and say something that you believe the folks that are on the committee want to hear. Authenticity for everybody goes an awful long way. So the more that they can hear you speaking your own truth, I think the more moved people were.
Thank you, Damon. And I think you're making a really good point in sort of further explaining why we are choosing from various sectors, because you can, as you said, you can find leadership in all of these places, not necessarily just in those who are coming from government or very specifically public policy. And so that was really great. Thank you for sharing that. Anna, do you have any thoughts about the application process?
I haven't sat in the same chair as Damon, or I haven't actually reviewed the applications, but I remember having a conversation with some alumni around that as well after I was in the program, and I've been advising others who've been applying for the program since. And one of the pieces I heard too, it is that variety of experience, right? And it could be a personal experience, it could be a professional experience, but really just showing a little bit more variety to yourself. If all your examples are from your current role, it doesn't really show the whole you. So how do you, and I love that advice about being authentic, because what this program really is about is those authentic conversations and bringing your whole self to the conversation. It's not about advancing your own agenda or those kinds of things. It's really about what you bring to the conversation. And I think that shows up in your application.
Great, thank you. All right, so moving on to the program cost and scholarships. So the program fee is $9,000. This covers each of the 10 sessions, the trip to DC, including hotel and airfare and meals. It covers meals during the sessions, as long as we're in person, speakers, facilitators, staffing, everything that makes the program happen. So it's funded by employer and individual participant support, but also grants from foundations and businesses, as well as alumni supporting the program as well. So if you are accepted, we strongly encourage you to seek as much employer support as you can, but we know that many organizations are experiencing challenging financial times right now, and we are committed to working with accepted fellows on an individual basis to find what works for them. So do not let the program fee prevent you from applying. We call them scholarships, but really they are fee waivers. So there are a range of options available depending on your personal situation. So sometimes we see a combination of individual participant support, some employer support, and then a partial fee waiver. Sometimes we'll see that the employer will pay the entire fee, or some other combination therein. Again, we do not want the fee to be a barrier, so we will work hard to find a combination that works for you. If you're from Greater Minnesota, we will cover the cost of a hotel that night before each session, as well as the night before and after the DC trip, since we'll be flying out of the Twin Cities. Okay, so I just want to check and see if there are any questions related to that or any other. So someone asked, are you 100% sure the 2021-22 class will be in person? So I can't say 100%. We are guided by MDH and CDC and the University of Minnesota overall. So we'll just keep our eyes on the progress as we get closer. See. So this past year, I've been in the Education Policy Fellowship Program. How is this different? I don't know, Anna and Damon, if you know about that program. I'm not familiar with that fellowship. Okay. So maybe that person, if you wanted to just follow up with us directly, we can talk more about that. So one question, what are some of the positive outcomes and benefits that you've all gained from participating in the alumni network? Anna and Damon want to take that one.
I'm going to defer a little bit to Anna on this one, but I'll say this much, and I deeply appreciate the consistency and organization. And by consistency, I mean I pretty consistently get invitations to events that are really interesting to me as a part of this, and that includes my alumni group. My group was pretty active. In fact, meeting during the pandemic was one of the highlights. You know, having that drop on my calendar was really great to see. So I feel like it's strong, and I think it falls into the category that Anna mentioned. If you're willing to invest something in it, you'll get a lot out of it, because there are opportunities, definitely opportunities to engage with it, and really interesting opportunities. You know, it seems a little bit, I don't want to say it's, the word that's coming to mind is, it might seem a little fluffy, but I don't mean that. You know, you go to a luncheon and there's a speaker, a really fascinating person, and you get to have a conversation at your table with some folks. It might seem straightforward, but that actually, I think more and more helped to deepen the experience for me, the shared experience of being a fellow. So I think that they've been good. Could they be better? Yeah, probably. I'm sure Sara is on that. And so are the folks that step up to be volunteers for the Alumni Network as well.
Yeah, I think it's not a very formalized piece of what you get out of it. I mean, yes, I love going and hearing some of the speakers, and Humphrey always provides those. And I think it's nice connecting across cohorts too. You really do meet some interesting individuals and understand just the broader Minnesota of what's here. It creates this, you know, common experience that people have had being part of the program, and there's that common connection. I think my own cohort, being part of our alumni network, has been, you know, we had someone run for city council, and a lot of us participated and helped. And it was, you know, as I said, I work in communications in a corporate environment. Politics is kind of fun for me. It was fun to get involved in behalf of her. I've had another, you know, person look at joining some different boards, right? And had a sit down discussion, and we talked about that. There's been lots of career changes, mid-career kind of programs, people moving and going in different directions. And so just staying connected and offering advice. And as I moved into a different role, just connected with a few of them and just got some advice and talked about some common experience we had. Remember the speaker, and we talked about this, and what do you think? And here's what I'm thinking. So it's just been a nice broadening my network of people in our community, similar shared experience, who you can connect with and bounce ideas off of much later. And I love that about the alumni piece of it, is you just have a common connection.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think the the connection you have with your own cohort is definitely stronger. But the alumni board also is, I mean, this last year, of course, it's been difficult having to do events virtually, but I think when we're able to gather again in person, they you know, are very interested in creating opportunities for alumni to get together as a group, but then also provide them with chances to continue to advance their own leadership and connect with other influential people. So let's see. So I think there's one question here. If I'm a nonprofit leader and volunteer, would this program help me learn about how to effectively advocate and lobby for my causes? So this isn't specifically a program that does that, but as I mentioned, in terms of the curriculum, many of the topics that we cover, like stakeholder engagement, building coalitions, thinking about how you can communicate effectively, all of those things would aid you in that kind of work. All right, so I think we've answered all of the questions.
Sarah, can I just add something real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
Just in a question, and I did respond to this in the thread, but I thought it was a really good question about the varying identities that people bring. How are they both sort of given distinct consideration and also invited or welcomed into the space? And it's a really good question, one that I think has been addressed, at least in the application process or in the selection process, more distinctly. I think the selection committee is looking for people that are carrying those identities and making that a clear part of what they are interested in being supported in the space. So whether that identity has to do with your cultural or ethnic background, whether it's about gender identities that you have, whether it's about identities that you have related to, sort of the letters behind your name, all of those things are really important to making up who we are and how we show up in a space. And so having a sense of that as you go into this experience is important. And then as this is continuing to be built out as an experience, it is important for the planners to do a good job of supporting those varying identities to feel welcome in the space. And I guess I would just say that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it wasn't the focal point, but I do think it is a focal point today of making sure that the Policy Fellow programs is doing an effective job of addressing all of those different identities.
Yes, thank you, Dan. I missed that question before, so thank you for highlighting that. And yes, I think what you say is a growth edge is an accurate description, and it is something that Kristen and Larry and I are constantly talking about, and we'll definitely be working as we move into the next cohort as well. Okay. Oh, there's some more. Let's see, more questions here. As the current cohort comes to the end of their program year, is there an opportunity to briefly join a session and gain a flavor for the experience? That's an interesting question. So I think I probably need to just chat with my colleagues about that. We only have really one session left. The last session is sort of when they sort of our commencement, if you will. So let's chat offline, and we can hopefully connect with people about that if that's of interest. Okay. All right. So just closing here then with a couple of quotes from alumni. So the Fellows Program ignited a passion and fire for community involvement and service, as well as a strong desire to serve in state government at some point in my life. Being in Greater Minnesota can make programs like this a bit harder to find. Thank you for having resources available to make it easier. And this is a photo from DC one year. All right, and the next is extraordinary insight on policy and how to influence the agenda for the greater good, great networking and strong lasting friendships with people I might not have otherwise met, exposure to thought leaders, educators, and politicians of all stripes to expand my own knowledge and challenge my thinking, a life-changing experience. So Damon and Anna, any final thoughts or advice that you would give before we sign off?
Well, I'll just start with saying, really happy to see this interest level today of people involved in the program. I think that keeps the program going strong, that it continues to generate some interest. There's success there for a reason. Mm-hmm. Really encourage you to think very thoughtfully about the application and apply it. And if you get selected, give it all. And if you don't, apply again. I mean, I think that's something I've learned too across the way, is just because you're not chosen for one cohort doesn't mean you wouldn't be down the road. And I think just coming into it with an open mind, I saw a couple of questions in there about what, you walked away or what could you apply? And I love Damon's answer to it. It's about learning how to show up. How do I bring myself to those conversations, whether they were positive or not? where the tension, where, how did you say it? Sitting in the tension is part of the growth. I love that piece to it. Because you do that in so many ways, not just on issues related to policy, not just on issues related, to politics. There's so many different ways if people don't agree on everything, and how do you find solutions and move forward out of that? There's lots of opportunities to practice that, learn from others, and then just coming with a listening ear. I met and grew so much from experiences of listening to people who had very different experiences than me, whether that was the experience of their work or where they live or how they grew up or where they, came from and what they were doing. And just sitting and having those conversations in a really purposeful way just opens your eyes, and it helps you then have those conversations in other parts of your life as well. And so I just say, bringing this idea of I'm going to learn and grow as a leader in this role, and I'm going to do it with this interesting group of people on all kinds of interesting topics and learn a lot along the way. And I think you will really get a lot out of the experience.
Well said. Well said. I don't think I can add anything else to that. I guess the only thing I would add is you come in with some expectations, but with an open mind more than anything else. You just don't. You never know what you're going to get out of experiences like this. And the more that you are ready for seeing possibilities in an experience, I think the more rich it will be for you. That's all I got.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. So great. Last words. So the applications are due Tuesday, June 1st. Again, the recording will be available, and please just feel free to reach out if you have questions that we didn't answer, or if they come to you later. We're happy to answer your questions at that cspg@umn.edu email address. And again, thanks so much, Anna and Damon, and thanks to all of you for joining us.